Well, we'll go ahead and get started here, and as more people join us, that will be excellent, and we'll talk and we'll see who joins us. We will be joined by Representative Sandra Feist, who is a great clean water champion, in a little bit, and it is obviously a very busy time at the legislature, as we'll get into. So we appreciate her giving us some time. So we'll go ahead and get started. I want to say first and foremost, thank you everyone for being here. We're really excited. This is a really busy time of the year, as I mentioned, but we have a lot of exciting stuff going on, and we've had some really exciting wins lately. So we're happy to get into it with everyone here. First, and I do want to say, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A function of the chat, and I'll make sure to answer it. Otherwise, you can put anything in the chat if you just want to say hi or where you're from or anything like that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So first and foremost, today we're here to talk about specifically the Minnesota Legislature. This is going on right now. This is in session. You may have heard there's been some big environmental wins, including passing the 100% clean energy bill. And so that is excellent, and we want to continue that momentum for the environment by passing a number of environmental regulations that we feel like are common sense, but also that are very needed to protect our clean water. So the first bill that we've introduced, so essentially what we're trying to do here is really address some of the problems that we see with Minnesota's environmental review process. We often hear people say, oh, Minnesota has the strictest environmental review in the world. That is not based on anything. That's not factual. And then there's a number of reasons that you'll see here why that is not the case. Well, actually, let me take a moment here to say hello to Representative Sandra Feist. Sandra, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, and I see a PowerPoint and I see your face. Do you see me, or should I go off camera?
Nope, we see you. I am just started to talk through the PowerPoint, but we'll pause that for a moment and we'll say hi, and just wanted to maybe give you a chance to introduce yourself and say why these issues matter to you.
Yeah. Great. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where not to be like weirdly backlit.
No, you're good.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, I just emailed you. Apparently, like our IT is going to go out at 12:15. So okay. I'm happy that I'm able to jump in. So hi everyone. I'm very honored. Oh, well, I've popped up things. Okay, there I am. Really honored to be working with the Friends of the Boundary Waters on its bill to ensure that we have a clean water plan for the next 50 years. This is just incredibly important, just in the abstract, like we need clean water. It's also obviously a really important way that we can ensure that our natural resources are protected from really dangerous mining practices. We just got news today that unfortunately the Tech and PolyMet merger has gone forward. We were hoping we had more time to maybe intercede to kick up some dust and stop that from happening, but that has happened, and it's just really a sign that we need to be really proactive. We need to be really vocal, and we need to be really strategic. And one of the things I love about the Clean Water Bill is that it is it's a really thoughtful, science-based approach to this advocacy work that we're doing, and I think that we hopefully have an opportunity to build some consensus to just really make this a common sense bill. Obviously all of the bills that would help us protect our natural resources and the boundary waters from corrosive copper nickel mining are common sense, but I think putting it in terms of just like our clean water and the context that around the country, we're seeing this become an increasingly urgent issue, and we need to protect Minnesota's water for Minnesotans first and foremost. I'm really excited, honored, and enjoying working with Friends of the Boundary Waters on this bill and many other things to protect our clean water and the boundary waters in Minnesota. So thank you so much.
No, well said, and thanks again for being here. And I think there's a couple key points that you hit there. We'll talk a little bit more in depth, in a minute here about some of these other bills, but specifically, the bill that you're referencing is a 50-year clean water plan, right? And so that's something that we came up with together. Sorry, you're going to maybe see an attack from my cat here in a moment, everyone. So I apologize for that. But 50-year clean water plan, right? It seems obvious that we're Minnesota, we're going to have clean water, right? But when we look at things like even just yesterday, they're talking about other states potentially shipping out our water from the Mississippi. Oh, there she goes. Say hi there. But not only that, right? We're talking about Lake Superior, which is 10% of the world's fresh water, which is something that I think some people maybe not realize, like how much fresh water we really have here. And then I think it's also an issue of it just seems impossible. As someone who grew up in Minnesota, we think of ourselves land of 10,000 lakes, land of clean water, sky blue water, and we can sometimes take it for granted. So it's really important to do this work, and we really appreciate having you here. One thing that maybe I'll get your thoughts on, since you are a representative, you're doing this a little bit out of order today, but that's all good. One of our watchers asked, can you list the best points to bring up or address when writing our representatives? And I obviously have some thoughts, but as a representative yourself, what is the best way that people like, our friends of the Boundary Waters on the call here can write the representatives, and what should they highlight?
Yeah. Well, so we don't have a bill number yet. When we do have a bill number, for sure include it. When I get emails that are really good ideas, but there's no bill number, I'm like, I don't know how to act on or against that. So once we have that number, I'm sure Scott will make sure everyone in the world knows what that number is. So include that. Always include your home address in your email so that the people you are reaching out to know that you are their constituent. So these are just some basics like on any topic. But that's really important. In terms of the clean water bill, I would say that, like I've mentioned, I think being proactive, like this is good governance, which we should all be able to agree on, regardless of our party affiliation. I think talking about good governance, being proactive, thinking in the long term, I think that is a good talking point. I think talking about how it's about our future generations, it's about our children, our grandchildren, our families. Making it personal, I think, is always very effective. And just so you know, like it doesn't need to be like a fancy bulleted point long email. The emails I get that are like 2 sentences that say like, I really think this bill is important because whatever, those emails mean as much to me as like the template emails. Template emails also work though, because it just says to me like, this is a constituent, this is on their mind. So either way is fine. Just know that you don't have to be like the person who is persuading them. It's really just about like numbers, like seeing like how many people are excited about a bill or concerned about a bill is really important for lawmakers. So yeah, I think I've already said it like 3 times, but I'll just say it again. Like we worked with scientists on this bill, and I am a co-founder of the Nerd Caucus. So I like sciencey bills, and they really helped us to be really thoughtful in how we structured this bill, to make sure that it is taking like basically we're going to have to like do this preliminary phase to make sure we know what data we need and can access in order to do this properly. And so I think just really emphasizing that this is a really well constructed, thought out bill. It hopefully will be helpful to those who might be more on the fence. Like I think like most of the folks on my side of the aisle are ready to go, but I think that is a messaging that can work if you do have a member who's more, either a Republican or someone who's a more moderate DFLer. I think that type of messaging can be really effective.
Absolutely. That's great. And I think a lot of what you said, frankly, applies to all the bills that we're talking about here today, right? I think the one thing that I personally like about working on the state level is that one, we have so many great dedicated public servants like yourself, but also, it's people really do listen. It really does make a big difference, and I think obviously this better than I do, but if you get 10 emails on something, that you're going to be listening to that, right? And I think that's something that when we're, I know that, when we are talking about things like this and other, issues that people are undecided about, it sometimes feels it's hard, right? Because we can feel like our voice doesn't get heard. And I think that on the state level, that can actually be different. And so that's something that I would encourage everyone to take action on that sense, and I think as our friend Debbie Nelson just put in the chat, Senator Duckworth is a Republican. We are a nonpartisan organization. We'd love to have, we think these are common sense bills that everyone should support, right? And so, but it's going to mean a lot more coming from you as their voter than it is from Scott, the lobbyist who's working for Friends of the Boundary Water sometimes, right? So everyone, really want to make sure that matters. So someone else asked Sandra, phone calls versus emails versus letters versus in person, what's the priority when contacting?
Personally, I prefer emails. Phone calls, like for me, I get too much hate calls right now because of I went viral on social media, not about this. So anyway, my legislative assistant listens to all my voicemails, and then she'll send me ones that actually relate to me and are not just people yelling at me from other countries. So yeah, personally, I like email. I respond to email really quickly. I'm always looking at my email. That's a really efficient way. I like getting letters, but I'm worse at responding to them. So I still I get them and I think about them. And if they're cute, I put them behind me. I've got a little row. So letters are always really nice. Personally, I'm just attached to my email. I'm a freakishly, I'm inbox zero person. So if you email me, I will get it, I will read it, I will respond. I imagine different legislators have their preferences, but we do have legislative assistants who help us with our voicemail and our emails. So you will, or our physical mail. So it all gets to us. And I think whatever is your comfort level, what is the least barriers for you to speak up? I think working with what works for you is always.
And so we may be experiencing some of those technical difficulties that Representative Feist warned us about. But a couple things that might be the outage at 12:15 that they experienced there. A couple things that Representative Feist talked about that I want to just highlight for everyone on this call today is one, you are the boss of your representatives. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that. And sometimes we have representatives that make us feel like we're not able to talk to them, but really we are their bosses. They work for us, they work for the people. And then, additionally, those email addresses, those phone numbers, that's all, that's public. That is paid for by the state of Minnesota. That is paid for by your tax dollars. And so you shouldn't be afraid to use it. And we are lucky if we have a rep that's as responsive as Representative Feist. But as she said, they do get these emails, they do get these calls, and they will track that. So make sure that you're taking action there. So she may be able to rejoin us. I know that she'll only have a couple minutes left when she comes back. So I would encourage anybody who has questions for the representative to throw those in now. And we'll talk now a little bit more. Normally we would do this the other way around with questions last, but I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to ask questions to the representative. But let's talk a little bit more specifically about what these bills are that we're talking about here. Okay, so as I mentioned, as I mentioned here, one of the issues that we're trying to address that we see too often, unfortunately, is the DNR actually has an obligation to promote mining legally. Now, a lot of people don't realize this. It doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. And we think about the environment and we like to think that our regulators are simply looking at a project, deciding if it will pollute or not. And if not, it won't go forward. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And we often see scientists at the DNR who know these projects will pollute. Their opinions are frankly overruled. And it's kind of a top-down political thing. And we want to make sure that we can get rid of that conflict of interest. So simply this bill would shift that promotion responsibility to the Department of Employment and Economic Development, which is DEED. We feel like this is more appropriate because DEED does not have permitting authority over these projects. And so making sure that DNR can simply focus on the natural resources, which is what matters the most when they're making these decisions, is something that we want to see. Now, this bill has been introduced by Representative Jess Hansen, as well as Senator Kelly Morrison, and we will follow up soon with more info on how to take action on this bill. Now, another problem, like I said, we like to use this legislation to address problems that we see, right? Is something called financial assurance. Now, some people may realize this, and some of you may have heard us talk about this before, but I'm going to give a brief overview of what we're talking about here. Now, these mines, as part of Minnesota law, are supposed to put up a certain amount of financial assurance, which is essentially the amount of money that it will cost to clean up the site, reclaim the site after it's done. And so after the mining is done. Now, we don't believe that it can ever be reclaimed to the same level, but still, this is stuff that needs to happen if these mines were to go through. And unfortunately, when we see what was approved for Polymet mine, Polymet was fully permitted in 2018. This is the mine that was proposed upstream of Lake Superior in the headwaters of the St. Louis River. It's a massive, massive danger to not only 10% of the world's fresh water in Lake Superior, but also to the Fond du Lac Reservation. They have treaty rights to hunt, fish, and get wild rice and clean water from the St. Louis River. All that is under threat, and it is very much dangerous, and we're very worried. Now, like I said, Polymet was fully permitted in 2018. Ourselves, other environmental groups, the Fond du Lac Band, we've been able to successfully overturn a number of those permits in court. However, one of the problems that we saw was with the financial assurance. And so when it was approved, this is not my numbers, this is DNR and Polymet's numbers. You can see here, this is a graph that we're looking at of the amount of money that it would cost to reclaim the site. That's in the orange there. And then the green is the actual cash that the Polymet has to put up. And so you can see until year 9, they essentially have to put up very little cash. They get to pay off their investors first. And then in year 10, there's actually about a $1 billion gap in between what the cost to reclaim the site would be and what cash the state will have gotten or received from Polymet. Now, as you can imagine, this is very dangerous because Polymet is simply a shell corporation. Like Twin Metals, it's a shell corporation for much larger international mining conglomerates. What happens in year 10 if simply they either have an accident or they just decide it's not as profitable anymore, and they decide to shut it down, declare bankruptcy? Well, we have a $1 billion gap that needs to be fixed, needs to be covered. And who's going to have to be on the hook for that? It's you, me, and everybody on this call, every taxpayer in Minnesota. And so it's a very, very big liability issue that we're worried about. And so what we're trying to do is introduce something called the Taxpayer Protection Act. Now, Taxpayer Protection Act is really key because it would ensure that we're not left on the hook for this. It's very simple. Again, we believe common sense. It simply requires non-ferrous mining companies. So that means copper mining, nickel mining, any heavy metal mining like that, essentially most mining that's not iron mining. So again, this doesn't affect iron mining. Would have to fully fund those packages upfront and in cash. We think that's simple. We think that they should stand by their project, and this is essentially the bare minimum they should do. And many people don't realize this, but there was a tailings dam collapse, a dam collapse. This mine waste has to be held somewhere. In Brazil, one of these tailings dams collapsed, and it was a $7 billion settlement that ended up happening to be able to clean that up. Now, that was the parent company that was named, so that's how they were able to hold them liable. In our situation, we wouldn't be able to hold them liable because they would be able to declare bankruptcy, and they're simply a shell corporation. So we're just saying, put that money up front in cash. Pretty simple. Stand by your projects. Another problem that we see here. Is ownership issues. As I mentioned, these are shell corporations. Twin Metals, which is the mine that was proposed outside of the boundary waters that was canceled by the Biden administration. They're owned by a company called Antofagasta. Antofagasta is a Chilean mining conglomerate that has terrible actions around the world, lots of environmental violations. In fact, in 2016, After the election, their owner bought a mansion in Washington, D.C. A week later or a month later, guess who was his tenants? It was Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. And then, lo and behold, a few months later, they get their mine back, and unfortunately that's since been overturned. But that's the kind of companies that we're talking about that are willing to engage in practices like that. And if it's possible to be even worse than that, Glencore is. Glencore is a corporation that was founded by what was formerly one of the FBI's most wanted men, Mark Rich. He was wanted in the 90s for trading with Ayatollah of Iran, trading with apartheid South Africa. And he was kind of infamously pardoned by Bill Clinton on his last day in office. So, that's the kind of guy that we're talking about that started this company. And they've essentially continued those same corporate practices all the way up till today. Even just last year, they had to settle for over $1 billion for bribery violations in other countries, and including the United States, UK. They also had a separate bribery settlement that they had to do in Africa. This is just a corporation that is not concerned with playing by the corporate rules. And then the reason you see this picture here is because they actually received a Medal of Friendship a few years back from Vladimir Putin, and they're one of the few companies that are still trading with Russia and still exporting Russian gas right now, despite everything that's going on in the war in Ukraine. And so it's a really terrible corporation. And the last thing I'll mention about this is, Glencore is named in many lawsuits regarding child labor. We often hear people say, oh, these mines, we need to do them here in Minnesota because there's children working in some of these mines in Africa, which is a terrible tragedy. And it is true, but the part that they leave out is that Glencore owns those mines, that are using these children. And so essentially the argument is we need to somehow stop child labor by rewarding the child employers, if you will, with the polluting mine in Minnesota. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so what we're proposing is what we're calling the bad actor bill. The bad actor bill would simply say, if you have certain violations, whether that's using child labor, environmental violations, bribery violations, just regular labor violations, you cannot get a permit to do this type of mining in Minnesota. We think that our water deserves the best possible stewards, and these companies have proven time and again that that's not them. And so we actually want to give these companies an incentive to change instead of simply rewarding them for their bad behavior. We don't think that these companies should be trusted with the future of our water. So that's the bad actor bill. And I saw somebody mention it in the chat. This is Prove It First. I hope that you've heard of Prove It First if you're on this call. If not, this is a very common sense law. It was a law in Wisconsin for 20 years. And simply what it says is, if you want to do this type of mining, first show us independent scientific proof that there's been one that operated for at least 10 years without polluting and was closed for at least 10 years without polluting. This is key for a number of reasons, because sometimes we see these mines that when they really start polluting is when they're abandoned after they're closed, right? And so that's really important. And additionally, the independent scientific proof, right? We're not just taking their word for it. We often hear people say, oh, this mine has been safe or this mine has been safe. And then when you look into it, that's actually not the case. As many people on this call will know, this type of mining, copper sulfide mining, has never been done without polluting anywhere in the world. And that's including in arid environments, not water rich environments. Additionally, it's never been done in Minnesota before. And so that's what we're really concerned about. We don't want to be the guinea pig. We don't want to be the test subject. Our water is too precious for the rest of the, we talk often about what kind of resources we're going to need in the future, and clean water is number one. And so we want to make sure that we're not just taking their word for it, and we're actually getting independent scientific proof before any type of this mine could go forward. I did see someone in the chat how instrumental was the previous work that Wisconsin has done in regards to Prove It First. I can't stress enough how instrumental that work is. Like I said, this law was a law in Wisconsin for 20 years. It was proven that during that time, no mines were permitted because they were unable to prove that there's been a safe one. And in fact, it was repealed by then Governor Scott Walker in 2017 because he wanted to try to get one of these mines permitted. And so we build, we're standing on the shoulders of everyone that did a great job in Wisconsin with this. Specifically, there's a representative named Spencer Black, or former representative. He's now a professor at the University of Madison. It was his bill in Wisconsin. And so we are, very much in debt to them. I did not think of the idea of Prove It First. Obviously, we did not think of the idea of Prove It First even in Minnesota. There's been other groups, citizen groups like Duluth for Clean Water, the Environmental Caucus, things like groups like that have really been pushing this. And we just looked at it a way to say, okay, we have multiple watersheds under threat, including the boundary waters, including Lake Superior. What's the best way that we can be of assistance? And we determined that to be to help with the Prove It First efforts in motion. So this bill has been introduced again this legislative session, and we're really excited to move forward with that. And we'll talk at the end here about some opportunities for everyone to help out. Quickly, you can see here, this is just some of the Prove It First coalition. There's over 30 environmental, native, and local business groups supporting this bill. You can just see some of them here. So it's a great amount of support for that. And then lastly, as we kind of actually bringing it back to the beginning when we talked on with Representative Feist, we are also pushing a bill that would again create a 50-year clean water plan for the state of Minnesota. This would direct funding to the University of Minnesota Water Council, which is an independent group within the university with a lot of scientific expertise. And those are the scientists that Representative Feist was referencing earlier. We really are concerned, not just with the threat of copper sulfide mining, obviously, but if you look at even the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, their impaired waters list, 56% of Minnesota's waters are already impaired. And we don't want to get in a situation where we're the clean water state without clean water. And so simply this bill, as Representative Feist mentioned, would appropriate that money to complete the first part of this study. And then hopefully we would have to go back if it was successful the next year to get additional funding. So those are the bills that we're talking about here. I will again put my email and phone number in the chat, and so will my associate Maggie, who is our outreach coordinator. We want to talk to you if you have questions, but that's the bill. So let's get into some of the questions here that we are talking about. And again, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A here. The first question is Dan asked, what is the cost and economic impact of the bill? Because this is earlier, I'm assuming that you are referring to the clean water bill. If not, please put in the chat and I can talk about the other ones. It is a $200,000 appropriation, so not too much in the grand scheme of things to scope the project, which essentially would be figuring out what they need to know, doing it in with scientific rigor. And then we would go back, and that's part of the reason that we're doing it in 2 phases, is because scientists, they want to be precise, which is great. That's why we love them. And so making sure that we go with the original $200,000 request, get that appropriated, and the scientists can come back and say, okay, we did the initial scoping, here's what we really need, and here's the economics, what we need to get it done. So that's what we're one of the things that Representative Feist was talking about when she was referencing, taking care of that and doing that in the right way. Okay, next question from Kevin. I want to encourage, sorry, I'm just reading these right now. Okay, so there is another bill Kevin is referencing for anyone who lives outside of Minnesota, and this is a great point, Kevin, so thank you for bringing this up. We are talking, we're talking a lot about the state legislature today, but if you're not in Minnesota, how can you help? How can you make a difference? Because as we know, the boundary water is the most visited, the most visited wilderness in the country. There's people from all around the world. And so one way, and probably the best way that people, anybody on this call who's not from Minnesota, people who are not from Minnesota, there's a bill at the national level introduced by Representative Betty McCollum. It's the Boundary Waters Pollution Prevention Act. And it essentially would say no mining of this type on federal land in the Rainy River watershed, which is home to the western portion of the Boundary Waters, like where Ely is. That would be no mining in that watershed on federal land, period. We strongly support this. We think it's very appropriate for this region, this water-rich region. Some people may have heard, if you're on our email list and things like that, I believe you'll have heard recently the Biden administration issued a historic victory for the environment, and they actually did essentially what that bill would do, but for 20 years. 20 years is the most that the Biden administration can do it for. So it would take an act of Congress to make it permanent. So please contact your reps, and we'll have a way to do that on our website very soon, since the bill has been reintroduced again. Yeah, so if you're out of state, you can really make a difference by getting your congressperson or your senator even on board for this bill, because that's what we need to pass it. So that is a great point, and thanks for bringing that up, Kevin. Okay. Someone asked, are there specific Republicans that could usefully be contacted about the clean water bill? Again, great question. We would love to have Republicans on board. There are certainly, especially the clean water bill, we feel like that we feel like all our bills should be nonpartisan and supported by everyone, but definitely those want the clean water bill. I know this is not the most satisfying answer, but I'd love to hear from anyone. We've tried to reach out across the aisle, reach out to both sides, both parties. We have not had any luck with the Republican Party, unfortunately, so far on supporting clean water bills. But we would love to hear your thoughts. We're hopefully going to be meeting with Senator Duckworth soon, as was mentioned in the chat. And hopefully he'll be on board. And so if anyone really has ideas, again, it's like what Sandra was talking about, Representative Feist was talking about in the beginning. It means a lot more coming from you. It means a lot more hearing from you. So if you are in a Republican district, or you have a Republican representative or senator, please reach out. Excuse me. Please reach out and let me know. And feel free to reach out and call me or call Maggie and say, hey, this is what I want to say. What do you think? We're here to help. We're here to assist. So if you hear anything positive, please let me know, and we can certainly reach out and try to do that. We have from Dr. Rim Porter, which legislators are committed to supporting this bill? It depends kind of on which bill that we're talking about. So first and foremost, Prove It First has, I believe, 70 legislative sponsors now. Or at least legislative supporters who have said publicly that they are in support of Prove It First. This is excellent. When we started working on this issue back in like 2018, 2019, I believe there was like 3 or 4 reps that were supporting this. And so now we're up to 70. So that's massive. I can certainly give you a whole list, if upon request, or if you have a question about a specific one, throw in the chat and I can answer it. Fortunately, we're building, and obviously Prove It First is probably the most quote unquote controversial, if you will. So people are supporting that. They're probably supporting the other bills. So we have a lot of support, but we don't have the majority yet. And so we need to continue to push on that. And Dr. Porter, if you have any questions on specific ones, I will look that up. Rep Bjorn Olson, I do not know. No, as of now, I have not heard of their support, but I can certainly follow up with them individually or with you because, yeah, we'd love to have, like I said, everyone on board. We think this is something that all Minnesotans should support, regardless of party or where they live. Dan Goodrich, what is being done to engage local communities and their concerns? What dialogue is there? Great question, Dan. So at Friends of the Boundary Waters, we actually have 3 main pillars of our work. You're hearing, the advocacy is one of them, which we're obviously talking about today. We were founded in 1976 with the purpose of getting the Boundary Waters designated in the first place. And so making sure that we're continuing that legacy, that's what we're doing here. However, we also have our education program where we send kids up into the Boundary Waters. We go into schools, we teach about the Boundary Waters and, why that's important. So we have that. And then finally, we have actually thriving communities is the third pillar. And the reason we do that is because of exactly what you're talking about here, Dan. You know, we want to be a good partner in the community. We want to support economic development that's sustainable. You know, we feel like a lot of the reason that these mines are even still around and still talked about, you know, they're such a bad deal, is because, you know, there's people up there that feel like they need economic opportunity and they're not getting that right now. And so any ways that we can work on that, you know, we have opened our office in Ely. We have an office right there on Sheridan Street. I would encourage everyone when you're around to go in there. And our Northern Communities Coordinator, Ozzy, is a great guy. He would love to say hi, love to talk to you. So make sure you're stopping in. And the reason that we open that office is really to do exactly what you're talking about, Dan, is be a part of the community, find ways that we can work with people, even if they don't agree with us. You know, we, for instance, we last year helped write a grant or not a grant, but we write a letter of support for a grant for a camp called Veterans on the Lake, which some people may have heard of. They are not with us on the mining issue. They support the mining, as far as I know. But, you know, we want to make sure that their project was able to move forward, because those are the kinds of projects that we want. And so doing those things like that, Dan, is really the way that we hope to bring people together and move past this kind of outdated mindset of it's mining or nothing. Someone says, I live in Duluth, where I believe our reps support these measures. What else can be done to take action in defending the BWCA? Great question, Matthew. So there's a couple things. First and foremost, in Duluth, you are very fortunate to have Senator Jen McEwen, who is the lead author on Prove It First, the lead author on most of these bills. So yeah, she is absolutely with us. Representative Alicia Kozlowski is also with us on all these bills, and she is great. Representative Liz Olson, I don't want to speak for her, so I believe she is concerned with protecting clean water, certainly, and so, you know, I would definitely say reach out to her and encourage her, you know, to support these bills. She very well may, but, you know, I want to make sure I'm not putting her on the record in something. So certainly reach out to her if you have that. I would say one of the biggest things that you can do if you live in Duluth is try to meet your Hermantown neighbors, because in Hermantown, in that Senate District 3, this is also, you know, it goes for people who live on the North Shore. Our senator, the senator there is a guy named Grant Housechild. Grant seems to be a good guy. I don't know him super well, but he is not supporting Prove It First right now. And so, you know, the Senate is 33-34 for the Democrats. The Democrats are very worried about upsetting the apple cart with a lot of issues that they have to move forward. And so that's one of the things that's actually holding us back. So if you know people in Hermantown, you can get them to contact Representative or Senator Housechild, get him to see that, you know, his constituents want their clean water protected. You know, that's something that you can really do. And that will help, you know, the Boundary Waters, Lake Superior, you know, to help the fight against all these mines. So that would be the biggest thing I would say is, you know, one, obviously, if you live in Rep. Liz Olson's district, talk to her. If you live or know people in Grant Housechild's district, talk to them and talk to him, because he is someone that we really, really want to get on board, you know, to follow the science. Okay, sorry, I apologize. I'm looking through the chat here. Yes, and Robin mentions that Representative Pete Stauber is the representative for the Northern Minnesota. That's Congressional District 8, which includes these areas of concern on the Lake Superior and the Boundary Waters. Yeah, it is quite unfortunate. For those who don't know, Representative Pete Stauber is probably one of the biggest copper mining supporters there is, and I think you would probably say that. He is someone who has certainly shown that he is willing to he's willing to stretch the truth, if you will, share misinformation, like we see from these mining companies often. And so I wish I had a better answer for you on how we can get, you know, Representative Stauber on board, but I unfortunately think that he may be a bit of a lost cause, but we are certainly open to ideas. There's a question about funding to the Minnesota State University system. I'm assuming that refers to Clean Water Plan. Yeah, Lindsay, let's talk. I don't know enough, frankly, about that system, that funding system, to speak intelligently to it right now. So let's talk. I'd love to hear more about who could be who could potentially be the person to talk to on that. Anyone else have questions or comments that I can answer before we take off here? Well, I appreciate everyone being here today. It's so great to see all of you, to have everybody on board, to have this chance to talk about Prove It First, and all the amazing things. I do want to give a quick shout out. We do have a former representative, Alice Hausman is on the call today. She was one of the first people to introduce this Prove It First bill way before it was cool. And so we thank Representative Hausman for that. And I thank everybody for being all on here. I would please encourage everyone, Maggie, put our emails in the chat, but it's just scott@friends-bwca.org, maggie@friends-bwca.org. Please contact us if you have any questions. We always want to hear from you. If you're able, we need more people in our Citizen Action Network. I know some people on the call today are part of the Citizen Action Network. This is a group of our most dedicated supporters. You'll be the first to know about what we need, how to help. And so if you want to join that Citizen Action group, shoot Maggie an email. And then finally, now that all these bills are being introduced, stay tuned on our emails. Obviously you get them if you're on this call. We're going to be doing a lot of Take Action starting on Tuesday and every week essentially for the rest of the legislative session. So we'll have easy links like Representative Feist was talking about, fill it in. You can obviously add your own message. And so if you want, you can get started on that right now on our website. We have our Take Legislative Action page. But other than that, we'll be doing this, pretty frequently coming up. Just want to check the chat one more time. Excellent. Yes, and someone says in April, can we do another one to update? And yes, we definitely can. And actually, I will give everybody here, the exclusive preview. No one knows this. You guys are going to be the first to know this. On April 4th, please mark the calendar. We will be doing a Prove It First day at the Capitol on April 4th. So we'll have a rally. We'll have speakers. We'll go talk to our representatives. So if you can be there on April 4th, or at the very least, make sure to send your representatives a message that day. But if you can, come down and join us, we'd love to have you. So that's April 4th. We're going to be at the Capitol. It should be a good time. And then there's someone in the chat can see, our good friend, Howard Marcus. There's a chat on peat bogs tomorrow night that I would encourage everyone to check out. Peat bogs, for those who don't know, are a massive carbon sink, and that's actually one of the issues with these mines as well. If we get rid of those peat lands, it actually releases carbon into the atmosphere. And so very, very worrisome. So I'd encourage everyone to check that chat out as well. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for all your kind words. We really appreciate your support. Lots going on. And so take action, call your reps, get in touch with them on all these bills, and get in touch with me and Maggie if you have questions. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Thanks for taking the time. Have everybody have a great day. Thank you.